Greetings, my friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. I am super thrilled to be here with you this day. Happy summer to all of you. I know school is just ending. This is a wonderful month. I'm so excited to be here with you to celebrate. This is my birthday month as well, so I am completely hyped. Happy birthday to all of you Geminis out there. And so with that said, we're going to get right into the show. Before we get started, I will make some announcements for you guys, of course. First off, the Let's Get Gritty podcast, it will be featured on Swing Girl Media channel. So tune in to that channel to see more of the show and more replays. Also, if you would like to follow me on social media, I'd love to connect with you. So my social media information is below. It's Facebook is Miss India White. My LinkedIn channel is The India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. If you're looking for math Twitter stuff, it's IWhiteBIL. Instagram is Indie238, and my YouTube channel is India White 123. So with that said, I also want to just encourage you when you get a chance to check out my website, www.india-white, for blogs, books, to schedule me for your next speaking or coaching event. And if you're wanting to be featured on the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White, please send me your email, a photo, a bio at india.white.123@gmail.com, and I'll get you scheduled. So with that said, guys, I'm super excited. The school year has just ended for many of us, and we are going into summer. However, we need to talk about some of the things regarding school. And I want us to hear from an expert today, someone who is a rock star in her own right. She's got a doctorate in education. She is really just killing the game, and she is owning her space as an equity consultant, as an entrepreneur, as an educator. And she's also part of the Mathematics Association of America, and she's doing some fabulous work. So with that said, guys, I am thrilled to bring on to the show today Dr. Jelaine Ali. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well, India. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. We are super excited to have you on the show. Now, Dr. Jelaine, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I am the founder of Compassionate Math, and my work is to help basically further math education in the US. And I have been a math educator. I am a math educator. I was a university professor. I've taught in the university level for over 10 years. And one day I realized that our teachers needed a lot more help, and they needed reframing. They help, just talking with teachers and working with teachers who were so burnt out from the pandemic. And I had taken some time off from my university and went into a classroom, and I basically didn't look back. So I've been spending all my time and resources supporting teachers.
Beautiful. And thank you for the work that you do. So I know that you have your doctorate in education in University of Arizona. And so you're the founder of Compassionate Math. How did all of this transpire for you? What happened?
Well, during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time thinking about life and the meanings of my day-to-day activities. And I took a leave of absence from my university. I'd like to say more, although I'm kind of in a bit of a legal dispute with my former institution. Okay. So don't need to talk about specifics, but I took a leave of absence. And with that time, I needed something to occupy me. And a colleague of mine a colleague in the math ed world suggested that I work with teachers. She said, you'd be great. And I thought, I don't know. I never thought that was the right space for me. I always wanted to work with students, but she really encouraged me. Other people had always encouraged me to work with teachers. And so I got into a school, and I was hesitant because most people say professional development in math is awful, that it's not useful.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go into a space that was just going to make teachers' lives worse. But I didn't go in with a PDI because that's not who I was. I'm an education researcher. So I
Right.
went in with my research hat on. And I basically helped the teachers think about and evaluate their work. I gave them some ideas, and it was amazing. I was transformed. And when I went back to that school the next month, the teachers walked in and they said, "Oh my God, it's PD day. I'm so excited."
Excellent. Excellent. That
Yeah,
means it's
and
effective what
I've
you're
been going
doing.
ever since. So it's been almost 2 years, maybe 3 years now. So
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you.
Fabulous. Now, I know that you're also an advocate for social justice and equity in education, right? Speak to us a little bit about that as well.
You know what's interesting, India, is I grew up in New York. I'm from Queens. I was born in Cairo, Egypt. I grew up in Queens,
Nice.
and I went to state in upstate New York, to a college upstate New York. And I this may be super naive on my part, right? And you could laugh at this, but I knew racism existed. I knew I was probably a victim of racism or sexism or misogyny. Um, or in my case, Islamophobia. Actually, the Islamophobia was pretty obvious. But I didn't, I never felt it until I was in the math classroom.
Interesting. Why was that?
I don't know.
So
But
explain, like, when you mean you felt it,
as
what
a
took place in your math
student,
class?
as a student in the math class, I knew that there was something where it wasn't me, or I just didn't understand why I was having the troubles that I was having.
Right. So,
And
for instance, was
mhm,
it during instructional delivery? Was it
yeah, when I was a student. So I was working for a while, and I decided to go and leave corporate America and get a math degree. And while I was getting the math degree, there were just things that were said to me or kind of done around me that it um and they just and I was struggling, right?
yeah,
So I wasn't the best student. I wasn't getting an
right.
A all the time, and things weren't coming natural, and my friends had to help me. And so I just kept thinking it was me. I just kept thinking it was me. And eventually uh a professor in the College of Education at University of Arizona kept saying, "Just come work with me. Come work with me. I know you're struggling. Come work with me. Come work with me." And I started thinking a lot because I started asking her, and I started asking people, like, what's wrong with me? I was fine until I started trying to learn hardcore mathematics,
Yeah,
on an academic level. And I didn't understand it. And um, when I started diving into the literature on equity and social justice in
right.
education, so many things in my life made sense.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
So elaborate on that. So how were you able to tie or to make a connection between equity and social justice and then your experience as a learner in the math classroom?
Um, there were times where I was struggling, where I was told I wasn't good enough, where I had been told I am not intelligent enough for a PhD. Haha,
Yeah,
you're wrong.
that's right. Call me
Um,
doctor.
that when when I started pushing for asking for help or pushing for new direction, I was told, why don't you just go teach high school? Which I didn't quite understand what that meant. And I realized that was, yeah,
Yeah, that was a cold
yeah.
dismissal.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
remember walking out of that professor's office thinking, I guess yeah, maybe, yeah, you know what? I should, because he made a really compelling case. High schools need really great teachers like me, and they need people with great perspectives, and I would be super successful. He made a really great case. And about 10 feet out of his office, I remember
Yeah.
thinking, oh my God, if I was 19, I would have believed him. But I wasn't 19.
Wow. This is very moving because I think you're not alone. I tell them my experience when I first, was an undergraduate, and my advisor told me, he asked me, he said, "So what's your major going to be?" And I said, "Math." And he looked at me and said, "India, Black women don't major in math. So I'm going to put you on statistics track because I don't think you can do it. See ya." And then 4 years later, when I went to get my degree, I did not go back to him because I felt like he had a fixed mindset. And so I continued to work. And at the end of those 4 years, when I came back and he pulled up my transcripts, he says, "What's your major?" He still had me listed as statistics. I told him, I said, "I majored in math." He said, "No, you didn't."
Good girl.
I told him, I said, "Check it." So then he checks it and then he says, "Oh, but you didn't get a Bachelor of Science."
Of course,
I
because
said,
they'll always move the
so,
goalposts.
so
It's never good enough.
this is what I'm saying is Dr. Jelaine, is all of this is so unnecessary. And I want to commend you for being able to triumph over anything and to have grit to say, "You know what? I see what you're saying, but something in me is saying, no, I'm not going to believe that." So how were you able to tap into your grit to overcome that feeling of hopelessness or discouragement that you might have faced during that season?
I couldn't go back to New York.
Wow.
Not that, and this wasn't that I wouldn't have been welcomed home. It wasn't
Right.
that I would, right. It's for me, if I left Tucson without my degree, I would have been a failure.
Yeah.
And there was a point where I remember I avoided calling my mom and telling her what was happening. I avoided telling her that I was
Wow.
having a lot of trouble. It's in graduate school, and that I was probably gonna fail out because nobody wanted to take me as a student. And wow, this is more honest than I expected to be.
You're keeping
And
it
then
real.
and and there was a faculty member who was willing to take me on as a student. Then she got another job at another institution, and her parting words of advice to me was, leave, because because it's better for you if you leave. You're not wanted.
Wow. Oh
Um,
my word. So how did you deal with all of this lack
so
of belonging,
I
right?
yeah. So I called my mom and I said to her, I'm going to go to the College of Education. I'm changing my program. And she said, "Okay, what does that mean?" I said, I'm not going to be a professor of math. I'm not getting a PhD in math." And she said, "Are you getting a PhD?" And I was like, yeah, it's going to be in education. She was like, "Okay, so you're getting a PhD."
Getting a PhD. Right. Not everybody can say that, right, Dr. Jelaine? So
Yeah.
wow. Beautiful. And I think I just want to praise you for your accomplishments and using grit, because I want you to talk about that emotional piece. And I can't imagine the microaggressions you went through and all of the I can't imagine feeling like you're alone, and talk to the listeners. What advice do you have for them when they're trying to cultivate grit and harness grit to get through
Mhm.
tough times like this? Because this is a very taboo topic.
Yeah.
People don't talk about this, but this is a very lived experience by millions of people of color across the
Mhm.
nation. So, talk to
Mhm.
us about your advice on how they can be gritty in their mindset when they're dealing with tough times like this.
So I'm gonna say I wasn't alone, India. And I think that's the
Beautiful.
thing that saved me. I had a lot of wonderful friends in my program. I made amazing friends in the College of Education, And I was, as much as I felt like I was alone, I really wasn't. And there were plenty of days when I was alone,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
wasn't. I had people to lean on and help me. I had friends staying up all hours helping me get through my qualifying exams, which I did. I
Yeah.
had friends supporting me and laughing with me and keeping me going. I had my parents checking up on me
Beautiful.
constantly, making sure that it was okay. And that's what happened. I there were days when I needed to just, where I would, where things were dark and I would lay in bed and I would curl up and I'd not want to do anything or care at all. But the days that I made the best strides forward were the days where there was somebody there for me. So um, when you're struggling, when you're having problems, as so hard as this is, reach out,
Yeah. Wow.
because we're all stronger together.
That's beautiful. Now, that makes me think though about
Mhm.
I want you to take all of those moments, that dark moment, and
Mhm.
then the moment that you cross the stage as
Mhm.
doctor, and talk to me. When you think of the big picture, how do you define grit?
Grit is, it's almost like, think about tie-dyeing a shirt. If you take
Okay.
a shirt and dye it, you'll just get, let's say you're dyeing it red, it'll be little pink.
Yeah.
You dip it again, a little redder, dip it
Yeah.
again, a little redder, or get a little redder, more and more, until finally one day, right? You dip it enough times, you're going to have a red shirt.
Right.
The red dye in this case is resilience,
Right.
is
Beautiful.
just persevering. And eventually you just build up enough resilience that you just like, yep, I've been here before. But you also have to, but I think that with grit, you also have to really think about having a strong sense of self,
Right.
and really taking care of yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Coming up with a some type of a strategy, or some type of a game plan where okay, if I'm going to be alone, this is how I get through that low moment.
Yeah.
If I'm going through some type of hardship, this is how I overcome. And knowing yourself enough, like you're saying, to know how to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
How do you have, what were some things that you did to get through those low moments? I know you talked about your support group. So that was one
Mhm.
thing that pushed you through. What else did you do when you needed an outlet? What did you do?
Um, let's see. I loved cooking, so cooking was always good. And it's finding things to lose yourself in a moment.
Yeah.
Um, and there were times where I actually spent. I will say that there were way too many times where I banged my head against the wall, where I wouldn't go out or wouldn't experience something because I had to stay home and study, or I had to make
Mhm.
sure that something got done. And I was a little too obstinate. I think I would have advised myself to just kind of let go a little bit. And the other thing that helps me is looking back. So sometimes you can't always plan, right, India? Right? Like,
Right.
planning is great and holding on and knowing how you're going to take care of something is great. And sometimes life just happens and you're in the weeds and you're
Yeah.
totally depressed and you don't know what to do. Um, there are times, those moments, sometimes I'll look back and I'll think, oh, I got through that.
Yes.
If I could get through that, I could totally do
The
this. Like,
growth mindset. You
I
got
mean,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, which is what helped me realize that I did not necessarily want to get tenure at the institution that I was at,
Wow.
because I've been through that world. I went through that world once. I
Wow.
went through certain
Right.
worlds. right? And then there were certain things that I saw. I was like, I'm good. I don't need to play that game. I'm strong enough to get
Yes.
through this.
Wow.
And
That is amazing.
yeah, and I was again, I was in corporate America. I don't know how successful I could have been because I decided I'm gonna walk away and be an academic. And then I was in a math department and I walked away and I went to education. Maybe this says that I'm a quitter constantly. I don't know.
I don't know that it's that. I
Right.
think, one thing is, I just want to, bring up this past point of you
Mhm.
tied your growth mindset to past victories, and
Yeah,
that helped you to build grit. But what you're doing is you're also understanding when you've either outgrown a space or you've graduated from somewhere and you have to now utilize yourself for a bigger cause. Now, that doesn't mean that
exactly.
there's anything bad. When I left the classroom to start working, as a math consultant, there was nothing bad about that classroom. There was nothing bad about being a coach. There's nothing
Mhm.
bad when I left administration. I just was graduating to the next opportunity where I could utilize my services to help on a bigger scale,
Totally.
because that is where I felt like God was drawing me to. And I feel
Totally.
like you understood that. You understood, okay, I've graduated from the space. I've
Mhm.
contributed all I can. One thing about it is all of us have a specific purpose, right? And a specific gift, specific destiny. When you came to the earth and you showed up in your space, which I'm thankful you did, I feel like your creator said there are specific things that Dr. Jelaine has to accomplish on this earth and nobody else can do in her space. And
Mhm.
therefore, he will put you, pocket you in specific parts of your destiny. Is
Mhm.
that a professor? Is that a teacher? Because all of that is building up because he knew you would have to eventually do compassionate math because you have something to contribute to the earth that I can't, right? You
Yeah.
have a specific purpose. So you have understood that and you've learned, okay, done here. Doesn't make it wrong.
Mhm.
Doesn't make it wrong. And then sometimes when we try to stay too long, that's when it gets really, 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 frustrating. And sometimes it could ruffle our feathers because it
Yeah.
is time for us to graduate to that next space,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you've matured enough to understand the cycles of life, to
Right.
understand that's a part of it. And I want to encourage people out here when you feel like, man, how do I deal with hopelessness or transition? Use your grit to get you through it. And so I want to talk now. I want you to talk, Dr. Jelaine, about how were you able to kind of uh, go through this situation with grit? How were you able
Mhm.
to, I guess, thrive through a period of hopelessness when you were transitioning by using grit? What did you do? What was your method?
Um, oh geez, I don't know. I mean, I guess like a phoenix rising from the ashes
Yeah,
is all the picture that keeps running through my head
yeah,
is you have to sit with yourself and you have to just be in a space where you're willing to love yourself. Um, when uh so I'll tell you honestly, the words compassionate math came to me when I was in a meditative state.
okay. Talk to us about that. So it's a spiritual time where you're
It
using.
was just yeah, yeah. I actually because when I was really lost. I was lost. I mean, the pandemic was rough. I had
Yeah.
a year a baby who was born a year before the pandemic, so I have a toddler,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah.
I was wrestling with a lot of challenges in that realm.
Yeah.
Um, I was wrestling with my career. I was wrestling with, wow, I spent all this time working towards a degree and working towards a dream job. I mean,
Yeah.
how many women of color are tenure track faculty members
Right.
in the math department? I mean,
Less
right?
than 10% for sure.
Yeah, and
Oh, yeah.
then to sit here and say this is not the world I want to be in, and I don't want to, and I don't want to go back and come back. I just sat with myself, and this is a space of privilege that I have like a beautiful, quiet home where I could just spend time alone. And really the words compassionate math, just I don't know where they came from.
Yeah.
And I will tell you instantly, as soon as here's a trade secret, right? If you come up with an idea, don't Google it, just buy the domain.
Beautiful.
I've just bought the I like within hours, I just went online and I just bought the domain compassionatemath.com.
Wow.
And I registered compassionatemath at Gmail. Just I didn't know why. I didn't know why, but I had to. And that's thank
That's
God I
awesome.
did.
Yes. Wow. Well, it was like your business plan dropped right in your lap
It
during a
really
moment of
did. And I think it probably literally saved my life.
and you know what? I'm proud of you. And I want to say, you used your grit to do this.
Mhm.
What advice do you have to tenure track professors that are looking to do their own thing and to launch out into the deep like you did through grit? What advice do you have to these professionals?
Well, first of all, just use your grit. I mean, grit is what got you where you were.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of space. I mean, I could absolutely be doing compassionate math while I'm a faculty member. It doesn't
Right.
conflict. It doesn't interfere. Absolutely use your grit. And you can make room. There's room in your life if I will say, if you're living in this privileged world that we're talking about. I do
Right.
know that not everybody has the privileges and abilities to do this, but you can do this. And here's the other thing. One thing in these past few years, you wouldn't believe the amount of women and people of color in the math world who've come to me and told me their stories,
Mm.
and they're heartbreaking and horrifying.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking. And there's a realization that I've had, and I think the reason that women and people of color are so few in departments, yes, systemic racism, institutional racism, misogyny, blah, 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 all that, yes. But there's a part of me that wonders if there's also a bit of a divide and conquer agenda,
Hmm.
a bit of if I'm the only
Ha,
woman,
ha.
that I
Yeah.
don't have somebody to go talk to, right?
Wow.
Or if I'm the only person of color,
Right.
then nobody understands when I need to, like, I'm tired because I'm fasting for Ramadan, or, right?
Yeah.
You see what I'm
Wow.
saying? So, my biggest advice, again, is reaching out and community. Connect with people and ask them one question. What do you need?
Wow.
What do you need?
Really care for them. Yeah. You know.
Because if you ask people what they need, and what I mean is, you see another person in another institution who's struggling, what do you need? Do you need an invited talk? I will send you an email. Come talk in our we do a webinar every week.
Very
Now
nice.
you have an invited talk on your CV.
Yeah.
Do you need my friend is writing a grant and they need somebody on their advisory board. I think you would
Yeah.
be,
Right.
right?
Right.
Develop that network and
Yeah.
support each other and help
Support.
each other
That is
and be
everything.
there for each
That
other.
is everything. There's, there aren't many women of color in the math space, I know for sure. And so I'm thankful for organizations like Black Women in Math and others
Mhm.
that have come up and they've decided to kind of spearhead some support groups. And they mention our names in rooms and spaces that we're not in, and we kind of
Yep.
advocate for each other. And
Mhm.
so I think that
Mhm.
sisterhood kind of concept really is imperative because I just
Mhm.
people don't realize that being the math dorks that we are, we like to talk about math, we like to do math, and
Mhm.
we like to be around others that like to do math. And unfortunately, sometimes being categorized or being in a group, associated in a group where you are of a minority or of a subgroup, that is not the majority, then sometimes there's this assumption that you don't bring much to the table, that you don't know, you're not as competent, and you don't have much, um, you know, just to offer in general because you're not of the majority. And so, with that said, I think it's beautiful that you're saying to reach out and to say, what do you need? What do you need? And I think too, being able to have enough grit to say, I need to connect. So, how were you able to then reach out and ask for help and to connect to where you are now successful, as an entrepreneur and giving back and helping? How have you been able to kind of utilize your grit for that?
Oh, Lordy. Every time I meet somebody, hi, I'm Jalan. I'm from Compassionate Math. Here, would you like a business card? Do you know a speaking
Beautiful.
engagement? Do you have a school? Do you work with teachers? I could come give a talk. I could do this. And it's interesting how my math ed colleagues look and they say, oh my God, you know how to market yourself and sell yourself and network. And
Beautiful.
it's amazing. And I'm like, it's a matter of survival.
That's right. That's
But
right.
it's also a matter of community building and it's an act of love. So
Yes.
the more people that I meet, the more I could say, oh, I know India, I know Dr. India, and I could connect Dr. India with this person and they can help. And then Dr. India gets better. And then Dr. India sets it in cycles. And we all just move forward and move forward together. So
Beautiful.
it's connection and it's supporting each other.
And you've been doing that. Like, so you're also
Mhm.
part of the Mathematics Association for America. So talk to us about your role there
Mhm.
and the amazing work that you've been able to do because you really are impacting that space as well. So talk to us about that.
So I am a member of the MAA, and so this is actually how you and I met. We are both on a committee to help support making the AMC American Math Competitions. I think that's what it's called, right? Right? Isn't that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
AMC. The AMC more equitable and more inclusive. And you and I have been doing great work in those
Yeah.
directions. And we're helping and working on coming up with some programs. So stay tuned. Competitive math is a great space to move forward if you're interested in math or interested in the sciences. It's not just it's not you can get so much out of the space just by
Right.
participating. You
Right.
don't have to have such a competitive spirit. So that work is really good. I'm also going to be presenting at Math Fest. I'll be talking about
Awesome.
yeah.
Yes.
So I'll be in 2023 in Tampa. Looking forward to it. I'll
Yeah.
be doing some presentations there. I'll be walking. I'm going to be walking around handing out compassionate math tote bags and magnets and
Good.
bookmarks. Putting myself out there and
That's right.
talking to women in the world and asking them what do you need, how can I help you, so that we can
Beautiful.
all get stronger together and all rise up together.
Excellent. And I'm so
Mhm.
happy that you're going to be there. I can't wait to connect with you. Oh my
I
gosh,
know,
we're
I
having a great
can't wait
time.
to hug you.
We have a phenomenal time. So
Mhm.
again, I'm just so thankful um for what you're doing in this space of math and of education. And so, with that said, you've talked
Mhm.
about the professional time that you've been able to use grit, and I want us to talk a little bit more too about just, I guess, building grit in the community. There's a lot of talk about just all the political junk going on, and we're not going to go deep into that, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of sway about, oh, these particular people either can't be successful because of what they've been through or whatnot, and they might not
Mhm.
know how to necessarily push through some of the things that they're going through. But then you also have different audiences that are saying, why do we need to be so inclusive? Why do we need to,
Yeah.
focus on equity in the math classroom, things like that. So just talk to us about how can we, I guess, kind of get this back to the main idea of grit, and how to also speak to these concerns that people might have regarding being inclusive and things like that in the math classroom.
Well, I mean, the math classroom, like any classroom, should be inclusive. And And we're taught at a very young age who is and who isn't a math person. Very,
Mm,
sometimes very subtly, but oftentimes
yeah,
very overtly. It's very,
right.
sometimes it's super obvious. You know, when you're put in a slow class, or when you're told, when you're given the different worksheet or something like that. That's that's a lot of signaling, and there are a lot of people, you know, actually the vast majority who get those signals. You know, success and rigorous and interesting, not even rigorous,
Right.
interesting mathematics is reserved for the few.
Fun.
um, I would say that grit falls into play when you sit here and you decide, okay, I'm going to learn this anyway.
Yeah. I love it.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think of learning math as an act of social resistance, social and political resistance.
Beautiful.
If
Wow.
you are if you are a member of a marginalized community, studying math is a great way to stick it to them.
Wow. Well, and I think it's I, people are starting to recognize that the concept hmm, of I guess having a bias towards certain uh demographics and stating or believing that certain people of a specific background are better than these others, that this is starting to be challenged and it's starting to be ruffled. We're starting to get reports of students with IQs that are greater than Einstein who are from like African American, Nigerian descent all the time. We have
What?
students that are yeah, students that are gifted, students. There was
Wait,
a two
really?
teenage African American girls, two teenage African American or African descent females who they figured out a code like a Pythagorean theorem, or they
Mhm.
figured out some type of really unique older theorem.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they're like not even 15 years old.
Mhm.
So this is starting to happen. We're starting to get a lot of that. Oh, you're the first person of color. This you're the first person of color. But I do want to say I'm thankful for the majority that have said we're going to welcome you into this space, because that that works with the resistance of saying we are capable. We are in this space. We do have competency. We're
Yeah,
not just doing this, and just putting stuff out here at whim. We really are competent, and we do deserve that respect, and we do deserve to be in this space. But
right.
that also happens because we do have the majority that is saying thank you, we're welcoming of you, and we do invite you in that space. So I'm very thankful for those wonderful, beautiful people that have always given us the opportunity as well. But I would like for you to maybe comment on that, or comment on, just any input that you would have to speak to those people that might be, worried about the inclusion and all that.
I mean, if we're talking about being in mathematics class, in math class, and we're talking about thinking mathematically, math is a human endeavor. We are human.
Right.
You're reaffirming one's humanity when you're allowing somebody, excuse me, excuse me for the allowing, no.
Wow.
But
Wow.
when
Wow.
when you give yourself the power to learn the mathematics,
But I
you
want
just
to
mm,
but I want to back you up,
mhm,
because you said allowing, and you're very right. You know why? Because
mm,
there's a culture where we allow certain, students to do more than others. So kind of, yes, allowing. Then
yeah,
that word has to be challenged to
right,
where
and that's
instead of being
exactly,
allowed, being empowered. And
yes,
I think
exactly,
that's
yep,
exactly what you're talking
which
about.
is why I caught myself, right? Yeah, because math is a human endeavor. We are human beings. Thus, we are mathematical beings. That's what, when somebody walks up to me and says, I'm not a math person, that's my response to them. I say math is a human action, and you were a human being, therefore you're mathematical. Now, maybe you weren't so good at school math.
Right.
That's fine. But that doesn't mean that you're not a math person. I know
Right.
a friend of mine, Carly Briggs, says that she's told her students that if you could see the difference between, if you understand the difference between this as 3 and the concept of 3, then you are a mathematical being.
Right.
And therefore you can do mathematics. That's all,
And
that's all you needed.
And this brings me to why I think so many people of marginalized populations, they feel paralyzed when it comes down to math because they've not been able to see themselves as math doers, as someone that can actually comprehend math or even lead in a math classroom. And so, we definitely have to work on overcoming those oppressive mindsets as
Mhm.
marginalized groups of people so that we can tap into grit and really thrive in the math space.
Yeah, and I'll push you even further in saying that we want to thrive, and we want to be in the math space, and we have every right to be in these spaces.
Wow. Whew.
Every
Wow.
right to be in those spaces. And um that's all it comes down to.
We have every right. That's the nugget. We have every right. Who said we didn't have the right? And that is where we have to start eliminating the voices and the actions and the policies that would say that we don't have a right
And
to be
also,
in that space.
right. And we have to recognize what if we're talking about mathematics, what is mathematics defined as? Because if we're talking about these old, like if we're talking about theorems, and we're talking about proving, we're talking about worksheets, and we're talking about school algebra, right? Most of that is defined by a very, very select group of people,
Right.
right? And though, but that is, mathematics is so much more than that.
Right.
And our place is so much more than that. I'm an Arab, I'm Egyptian.
Yes.
Mathematics is in my blood.
Yes, it is.
And
Mhm.
guess what?
Beautiful.
This mathematics is what influenced
Yes,
European
it
mathematics.
did.
I mean,
Yes.
my students are always blown away when they understand that 0 was a concept that originated with the Hindus,
Mhm.
and that algebra is named algebra after an Arab. And
Wow.
I mean, we have always been mathematical beings. Everybody around the world. It doesn't matter who you are and where you are. Now, just because the French and the Germans happen to codified the way that math is being done, and it lives with us today, doesn't mean that all the influences and everything else that came from it didn't come from anywhere and everywhere else, and that it's less valid.
Oh,
The value
wow.
of saying that math isn't important is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And and you see it consistently. You see it when you look at the Great Pyramids of Egypt and you say, oh, aliens built it. Why?
Mhm.
Because you're not going to give somebody
Yeah.
that looks like me the credit for
Oof.
being able to build such a beautiful and gorgeous
Whew.
monument.
Wow. I mean, and it's, at the end of the day, you really do have to use common sense. Come on, you're talking thousands of years ago. What people, lived in, and were habitating that area. Come on, think about it. Come on.
Right.
You're trying to
So
say what you think there was a host of people from an entirely different demographic that just what do they do? Take a plane over a boat? What
well,
like
they
what do
did.
they
Apparently,
build
they took a spaceship.
to build a pyramid? Really? That's
Yep.
what
Apparently,
really.
they built a spaceship, and they needed a space dock and whatever. Those
Yeah,
ancient aliens, right? The
yeah.
notions like that in society. Which, by the way, when I was in Luxor and touring the gorgeous temples and went to Abu Simbel, I was teasing my tour guide and kept saying, the aliens built this. But and he was so angry, but he knew I was joking, and yet he was still angry. And
Yeah.
absolutely. Why? Because it completely diminishes the intellectual contributions that people of color and women have made throughout history. Look at quilting patterns. Look at crocheting and hyperbolic geometries.
Wow. And it's honestly, we're in a space now where we're just going to have to admit the truth and own the truth of how many beautiful contributions people of color really have brought to the space.
Mhm.
Um, you know, in so many different areas, not just math, also music and whatnot. But I just think it's wonderful the work that you're doing and the work of being an advocate for social justice in the math space. And so, what advice do you have for those that they might want to kind of do this, but they might be a little bit in their turtle shell, a little bit reserved, or they know it's the right thing to do, but they're not quite sure how to join the bandwagon?
Which bandwagon of
The
just getting on this?
social justice and advocating for math and
Mhm.
people of color in the math space.
Um, Tap into your strength, right? I
Yeah,
mean, tap into your strength. I'm kind of in a space where I'm just like, I have nothing to lose, so
yeah,
so I can be loud and obnoxious and pushy about this, but it takes a lot of strength to do this.
yeah.
And
It's great.
again, it needs the grit, it needs the strength, and it needs the community and the network. Believe me, it is unbelievable how when I've become much, much more vocal about being a woman of color in the math world, how many people have come out to support me and
Yeah,
how many people have said, yes, me too. I mean, maybe we need a Me Too
Me
math,
Too movement.
right? I mean, it's
Wow.
it's insane. And so there's work that I'm doing where I'm going to try to actively help women and marginalized peoples and women of color connect and build on their strengths and be able to use my power to help you, and
Beautiful.
you use your power to help somebody else.
Right.
And we keep doing that, and then we all elevate ourselves. Well, what happens when I write a paper and I cite my good friend who kept me up and helped me up in my
Yeah.
lowest moment? She gets a citation
Yep.
and her
Yeah.
paper gets more visibility. And
That's
what
right.
happens when somebody invites me to give a talk at their institution? Somebody else in the room says, wow, oh, you do a trauma workshop? You do a workshop on
Beautiful.
math trauma for students? Our students really need that help. I'm like, okay, well, let's get a job. I would have never gotten that connection if I
Yeah.
wasn't invited by a friend of mine who wanted to do nothing but lift me up and support me.
Wow. That's beautiful. The
Mhm.
power of networking and collaboration and really
Absolutely.
advocating for each other. And I think that is a calling that you need to take up. If you have not already. I think from talking, I would definitely support you in your networking efforts and putting something together, whether it's on your compassionate math website or something where you
Mhm.
bring a community of Me Too math ladies. And we just kind of spearhead and advocate for each other and put each other in the rooms and
Let's do
create
it.
opportunities for each other. Let's do it. I mean it.
I have a plan. I have a plan
Yes.
for I have a plan
Yeah.
for Math Fest, so I'll tell you about my
Beautiful.
plan, and then you
Sounds
can
good.
help me envision it.
Wonderful.
What do you say?
Sounds good. I can't wait to see you. So with that said, thank you so much, Dr. Jelaine, and it has been an honor to have you on the show. I'm so thankful I met you. I'm thankful we're able to do work together, and I can't wait to see how much you're going to bring to the table with these great future projects, and even at MAA Math Fest when I see you there, and hopefully I'll be able to definitely attend your sessions. So with that said, I want to start wrapping up the show, of course. Now, how can we reach you, Dr. Jelaine, for those that want to book you for an
Mhm.
event, a speaking engagement, a workshop, consult with you?
Sure.
How can we reach you?
You can easily find me through compassionatemath.com, and
Okay.
that is focused on the compassionate math work that I do in working with
Yeah.
supporting teachers and
Mhm.
students and parents,
Mhm.
business leaders, everybody. You can reach me through compassionatemath@gmail.com. Those are the two spaces to find me. I
Okay.
am on LinkedIn. Would love to connect.
Okay.
And I put up a couple of videos on TikTok. I'm really working on upping my TikTok game. So you know,
Understood.
it's tough. It takes a lot to get them up. So look for me on TikTok, but compassionatemath.com and compassionatemath@gmail.com. I'd love to consult with you. I'd love to speak about being a woman in STEM. I'd love to provide
Beautiful.
PD or provide a workshop on trauma for students, helping students and teachers, because
Beautiful.
teachers have math traumas as well that we can work to overcome them.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much again, Dr. Jelaine, for your energy and your expertise and all that you've done in the math space in education. I'm proud of you. Keep doing the phenomenal work, and we
Thank
will be
you.
in touch for sure. So thanks for joining us on the show. And do you have any last advice that you want to leave our listeners?
Oh, grit and community and helping others.
Yes.
That's it. Those
Great.
those three bits.
Great resilience in time, community, and helping others. So, with that said, thank you for your contributions. So,
Thanks
thanks,
so
guys, for
much.
joining us on the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. And until next time, we will see you later. Stay gritty.